Good morning. This is Ian King Live, an hour of business and economic news from the heart of the city. Well, I'm afraid the business news is going to be on hold for the first half hour or so of this programme because there's a big political announcement coming up. The Labour Party is today announcing it's planning to abolish the House of Lords as it plans to overhaul the way Britain is governed. Sir Keir Starmer is describing this as the biggest ever transfer of power from Westminster to the British people. Well, Sir Keir and the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown are due to outline their plans in a speech in Leeds shortly. Our political correspondent Tamara Cohen is in Westminster. Tamara, this is really quite niche sort of Westminster bubble stuff in one sense. Why should we care about this?
Hi Ian, I think that's the challenge for Sir Keir Starmer. He's asked Gordon Brown to work on this report for the last 2 years about how we shake up politics and restore people's trust in it. And he's trying to say that there will be tangible changes to the lives in people in England. He mentions particularly people who voted to leave the EU and felt Westminster, he says, was remote from their lives and they want decisions made more locally to them. And also in the devolved administrations in Scotland and Wales, he says that there can be change to how people's lives are governed without people having to vote for independence. But I think the challenge he's going to have is how quickly many of these things can happen and whether people will really notice the difference in their day-to-day lives. The biggest headline from this report, which we've just got in the last few minutes, is that Keir Starmer wants to, if he becomes Prime Minister, abolish the House of Lords after hundreds of years and replace it with a directly elected second chamber. He says that that would stop cronyism, stop these lists that former Prime Ministers put out of all their friends and donors getting places in the House of Lords. But he said while it's his intention to do that in the first term of a Labour government, it does need to be thought through quite carefully, and he wouldn't commit to a time frame on that. I mean, this report that Gordon Brown has produced is 150 pages long. It also talks about how people feel that after 12 years of Conservative government, he says that living standards haven't improved, that public services have been run down, and the way to tackle that and to generate economic growth, he says, is to empower local politicians. And the local politician you can see on your screen there is Tracy Brabin, the Mayor of West Yorkshire. Now, that is a new job that was just created last May, and the report suggests that Labour would like to see many more directly elected local mayors across the country, perhaps having charge of local budgets, being able to make decisions about transport and housing and education, so people feel more that these decisions are being made in their areas by people close to them. But the Conservatives' response to this announcement today has been to say that they are focused on delivery and Keir Starmer is focused on the Westminster bubble. So whether Labour can actually ignite people's interest and make people feel that this is going to have real improvements to their lives is the challenge for Keir Starmer when he speaks today. But he says this is the most radical shake-up of our democracy that has happened for decades, and that Labour wants to see it through if he becomes Prime Minister.
Tamara, how much of a risk is this? If you think back to when Labour was elected in 1997, obviously devolution was a big constitutional reform that they enacted. It was specifically designed to keep the SNP out of power, and it's actually had the opposite effect. Is there a risk? Oh, here we go. Well, we'll have to leave that question for another day tomorrow.
We'll come back to that one. Gordon Brown's about to speak.
It's a real pleasure to be at this great university, to be in Leeds, and to be back in Yorkshire. And it's a real privilege to be the warm-up speaker for the leader best equipped, best qualified to be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer. The leader that will take this country into the future. And it's also a pleasure to give a vote of thanks to Tracy Brabin, whose spectacular success in just 18 months as Mayor proves the central case that our Commission is making today for the biggest transfer of power out of Westminster and Whitehall to the localities, and it's the biggest transfer of power that our country has seen. Now, today's report is not a one-man report. It is a 12-member Commission report, and I want to thank the members of the Commission sitting in the front row here for all the work they have done, representing every region and every nation of our country. Thank you very much for what you have done. For today, what Labour is doing, we are ditching a century of centralisation. We are calling a halt to the over-centralisation of power at the centre that has brought us Conservative sleaze and Conservative scandal, and we're ending the long era of the man in Whitehall somehow knowing best. Now, start from our faith that instead of developing some of the potential of only some of the people in some areas of the country, we can create a United Kingdom that develops all of the potential of all people in all areas of the country. And identified in our report are 288 new economic clusters, 200 of them outside London, in digital, environmental, life science, advanced manufacturing, and creative industries. These are the future engines of growth. They cover every city and every region. They are employment hotspots capable of creating tens of thousands of new, high-paying jobs around our country. And we show today how mayors and local economic partnerships and local authorities can create the supportive local environment. And so, first of all, to link the jobs people need to the companies who need them, we propose 638 job centres transferred from inflexible central control down to local control. To match local skills to local employment needs, the devolution of 200 colleges of education to local control. To finance research and investment urgently needed across this country, and to bridge the regional equity gap facing growing firms, the British Business Bank will be transformed into the British National and Regional Bank, and to build regional transport and infrastructure, we propose joint ventures with the European Investment Bank. But to secure the irreversible transfer of wealth, income and opportunity that we want to see, we also need an irreversible transfer of power. Past devolution settlements, as Tracy has just described, have left the centre unreformed. So to ensure the right powers are in the right places, we must first stop the wrong powers being wielded by the wrong people in the wrong places. And so the new Britain needs a new Westminster, and we need a new Whitehall. In recent years, as you all know, an unreformed centre has been exposed as out of date, out of touch with local needs, out of its depths when it tries to micromanage local events, and all too often out of control. Conflicts of interest, the misuse of power, the abuse of patronage, ethics so unacceptable that this government has lost all its recent ethics advisors. So we've not just to change who makes the decisions, we've got to change the way decisions are made. Now, the starting point of cleaning up our politics is setting forward a mission statement of what the United Kingdom is for. These are our obligations to each other to deliver free universal healthcare, end poverty, build a sustainable environment, have strong defence and guaranteed security. And with that are new rules so that public servants will always serve the public, enforced by an anti-corruption agency that we propose to investigate wrongdoing, guided by an Integrity and Ethics Commission, as proposed by Angela Rayner, for day-to-day monitoring of standards in public life, and so that it is clear that the era of self-regulation at the centre is over, a citizens' jury representing the public undertaking a regular review of standards in public life, backed up by a ban on all foreign funding of British politics and an end to MPs' second jobs. So we need a clean-up, but we also need a clear-out. 50,000 civil servants transferred out of London to save £200 million, and the first 12 of many agencies that are also candidates of dispersal to save millions of pounds more, to the benefit of all the proposals that Rachel Reeves is making. The replacement of the indefensible 830-member House of Lords with a smaller democratic second chamber, which would be an assembly of the nations and regions that would lose its right to delay ordinary legislation for a year but assume a new function to protect the Constitution. Our message is opportunities for all, unfair privileges for no one. And to ensure we work together in future, we're going to end the standoff between local and national politics with a new Council of the United Kingdom chaired by the Prime Minister to examine issues of common concern to all parts of the country. Now, in 2016, the British people were promised they would take back control. But it's not the people, but the old Conservative establishment that took back control. And millions of people, both Leave and Remain voters, still feel neglected, ignored, forgotten, invisible to the powers that be, and often left with the feeling that they're being treated as second-class citizens. So as we make clear, Labour is not the old establishment in waiting. It is a new government in waiting, ready to transform Britain. Now, after years of moving apart, devolution in Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, and then centralisation in England, we are now all talking about empowering local communities. And with a detailed plan to make the UK work for Scotland and Wales, as well as for the regions, we tell both yes and no voters that we can reunite the country. The issue now is no longer independence versus the status quo in Scotland, but change within the UK to benefit Scotland versus change by leaving the UK, which would do damage to Scotland. And so I believe today we can give people hope. Removing the dead hand of centralisation, we are proposing that there be a government not just of the people and for the people, but a government by the people. For there is a basic truth upon which we build all the recommendations of our report that you will see in detail today. And again, I want to thank all members of the Commission for the work they have done. Wherever you go in Britain, there is talent yet to be developed, ability still to be realised, endless potential waiting to be fulfilled. And conscious of this huge gap today between the Britain we have and the Britain we have it in our power to become, I look forward to a new Britain where there is equality in opportunity and fairness in outcome, a new Britain led by the Labour Party, a new Britain led by Keir Starmer, whom I introduce to you now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gordon, and thanks to all of you for coming this morning. I can see so many faces here. It's fantastic to be back at Leeds University, where I spent 3 happy years. And thank you to the Commission members who've joined us this morning as well. And thank you, Tracy. You're doing an incredible job here in West Yorkshire, protecting the safety of women and girls, cheaper and better buses, making this region a hub of green industry. But I know that you could do so much more. I know that businesses here, people here, communities here could do so much more. But you're being held back by a system that hoards power in Westminster, a system which smugly thinks it knows what skills, transport, planning and job support West Yorkshire needs better than the people who live here. I've long been convinced that this broken model has held back our politics and held back our economy. And I'm determined we unbind ourselves and free our potential. Britain is one of the most centralised systems in Europe, and the centre has not delivered. Now, I don't want it to fall apart. I want us to build something new. Anyone can see what's happening in the UK today. We have an unbalanced economy, one which makes too little use of the talents of too few people in too few places, and which the Tories have dragged into a vicious cycle of low growth and high taxes. Faced with this narrow path of stagnation, is it any surprise that people up and down the country are crying out for a new approach? Now, during the Brexit referendum, I argued for Remain. But I couldn't disagree with the basic case that lots of Leave voters made to me. They wanted more control over their lives, more control over their country. They wanted to create opportunities for the next generation, build communities they felt proud of, have public services they could rely on. And I know that in the Scottish referendum in 2014, many of those who voted yes did so for similar reasons. The same frustrations at a Westminster system that seems remote. The same yearning for the chance to build a fairer future for themselves and their families. People know Britain needs change, but they're never going to get it from the Tories, who talk about levelling up, but refuse to move power away from Westminster, who once promised a stronger union, but can't work with or for Scotland, and who think that the only route to prosperity is to make the rich richer and hope that somehow it trickles down to everyone else. To build the future our country deserves means change. It means higher standards in public life, a wider spread of power and opportunity, and better economic growth that benefits everyone wherever they are. No more navel gazing or facing inwards. Higher, wider, better. That is how Britain must set its sights. And I'm determined that with Labour, that's exactly what we will do. That's why I asked Gordon and the Commission to carry out a report on the future of the UK. I asked them to put together proposals for the biggest ever transfer of power from Westminster to the British people, so that if Labour wins the next election, Britain will see a change not just in who governs, but how we are governed. The tools to a fairer society and a stronger economy placed directly in the hands of working people. So together we can build an economy not just for the many, but by the many and of the many. Now, redistribution is a good thing, but it's not a one-word plan for a fair society or a strong economy. By empowering our towns, cities, regions and nations to work together on local growth plans, Labour will reignite our economy. New powers over skills, transport, planning and culture, all helping to drive growth by developing hundreds of clusters of economic activity. Labour will rebuild trust by reforming the centre of government, cleaning up sleaze, nourishing the relationship between central government and the devolved authorities, and replacing the unelected House of Lords with a new, smaller, democratically elected second chamber. Not only less expensive, but also representing the regions and nations of the United Kingdom. And Labour will reunite our country with new missions based on our shared values and priorities, cooperating to tackle climate change and addressing inequality, giving Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and the regions of England new status and louder, prouder voices in a reformed and modern United Kingdom. I want to thank Gordon and the Commission for their work. They've put forward a compelling vision of how we can break Britain's economic and political malaise, how we can restore trust to British politics, how we can offer a fairer, greener future to the whole of our United Kingdom. That vision is underpinned by serious and bold recommendations, and these will now be a matter of public consultation, so they can be tested, refined, and made ready for implementation. We will set out our final plans in our manifesto. And I invite everyone who wants to build that fairer, greener future to get involved. Whether you voted Leave or Remain, yes or no, live in a city or town, we will make common cause with you. Together we will forge something bold, something modern, something hopeful. Together we will build a better future. Thank you. Thank you. We're now going to take some questions from the media, and I know it's been a race with the trains to see who arrived and what order they arrived, but I'm going to do my best on who I know and think is here. Beth from Sky, can we take you first? I can see you've arrived safely.
About got here. Keir Starmer, at a time when people are struggling to pay their bills, feed their families and are striking over pay settlements, you've produced a 155-page report talking about devolution, constitutional reform and abolishing the House of Lords. This might look to many people as completely out of touch, and you could look like another politician talking to Westminster about stuff that might never come to pass. Can you give me one thing in this report that would improve people's lives from day one of a Labour government? And if I may, to Gordon Brown, Nicola Sturgeon has declared the next election a de facto independence referendum. You talk about further devolution, but hasn't the horse already bolted? And do you accept that Scotland could become an independent nation in your lifetime or mine? Thank you.
Beth, the complete opposite of the proposition you put to me. This is vitally important. If we ask ourselves in this room across the country, what is the single biggest thing that's holding us back? It's failure of economic growth over the last 12 years. I profoundly believe that amongst the causes for that is because we have not allowed and empowered every part of our country to play its part in building our economy. We've relied far too much on London and the South East. We have not let the whole country play its part. This addresses that question. And I can tell you, wherever I am across the country, whether it's Burnley, Hull, Blackpool, Stirling, Sunderland, Southampton, everybody I meet, and so do my shadow cabinet, they meet communities and businesses and people that say, we've got ideas, we've got innovation, we want our community and our place to be even better than it is. We just need a government that shares our ambition, shares our vision for the future. So this could not be more relevant. And, you know, I'm fed up to the back teeth with sticking plasters for the problems that we've got. The underlying problem is our economy isn't working. This is a strong, compelling set of recommendations that do what politicians have all agreed needs to be done, but nobody's actually done it, which is to be bold enough to say, well, we've got to stop those in Westminster and Whitehall pretending that they know best about the communities that desperately want to play their part in the future. We're going to transfer that power to them, rebuild our economy. And I don't think this is the complete opposite of a discussion in Westminster. It's accepting that Westminster is not the place for those decisions to be made. They've got to be made elsewhere. Gordon, can I bring you in on the second element of that?
Just as in 2016, a lot of people voted for Brexit because they thought that was their only chance of change. In 2014, a lot of people voted for independence because they thought that was the only change on offer. We are changing that entirely today. We are breaking new ground. The ground on which the battle is fought in Scotland is changing forever, because what we are saying is we are offering change within the UK that will benefit Scotland, as against change by leaving the United Kingdom, which we think will do damage to Scotland. And that's going to be the debate from now on in, not change, not independence versus the status quo, but change within Britain versus change by leaving Britain. And the measures, of course, we're putting forward to give more power to Scotland and to Wales and to the regions and localities and communities of England all go hand in hand and are in the same direction together. So when you come to the next election, it may be that the Scottish National Party will have a one-line manifesto and want a one-issue general election. But I tell you this, we have done a huge amount of research on Scottish public opinion, and people want a better health service immediately. People want living standards improved immediately. People want jobs for young people immediately. People want better housing immediately. And people, of course, want change in the way that we are suggesting immediately. And that's going to be the issue on which we fight. We are offering a plan for economic, social, political and constitutional reform, not a one-issue election.
Thank you.
Mr. Starmer, sorry, just if I may be a bit cheeky and ask us a quick follow-up. I asked you which policy in this report from day one will change people's lives, because it's so amorphous. What's the one thing that you're going to do, the most important thing in that report that will change all of our lives?
Devolving power in relation to skills, education, transport, resources, finances into our local communities so that they can help us grow the economy. There are so many examples of this. You've got video games in Dundee, you've got ceramics in the Midlands, you've got creative media in Bristol and Bath. Hydrogen could be what the North East revitalises around. There are so many examples. I think we've got 288 economic clusters. If we were able to transfer power in this way and get those clusters to operate. It will bring about a huge change everywhere, including here in Leeds. That would, if we were to turn around our economy, or begin to turn around our economy, it would have a massive change. All these issues about the cost of living and the strikes, all the things you ask us every day, have one common cause, and that is our economy is not working for everyone in this country. It is the mission of the next Labour government not only to fight the election on that issue, to win it, and to bring about the change that we desperately, desperately need in this country. Chris.
Thank you. Chris Mason from BBC News. Let's talk about specifics, Keir Starmer. How much of this do you actually want to deliver rather than just talk about? And on one of the issues, do you promise to get rid of the House of Lords within a first term of a Labour government? And what do you say to those who are struggling to pay bills at the moment, who are worried about the strikes coming up, who hear this morning and just think it's a bit high-minded and academic?
Yeah, Chris, on the implementation, I asked for this work to be done because I fundamentally believe this is the change we need to bring about in our country, and therefore it will be the driving mission of the next Labour government. We now arrive with a report and with recommendations, and when we set up the commission, Gordon and I talked about the terms of reference, and in the report itself, I wanted, and the report delivers, recommendations capable of it being implemented within the first 5 years of a Labour government. So very clear about that. We will now have a period of consultation to refine, to test, but also to make sure that we can answer the question, when and how are you going to implement? And if you're going to make such a big transfer of power away from Whitehall to lots of places across the country, then we obviously need to have that discussion about how is that going to be done, because this is not going to be a talking shop. The reason we're doing the consultation now, between now and drafting the manifesto and before the election, is I don't want to do the talking afterwards. So we're not going to be consulting when we're in power. We're going to be delivering, and we will be delivering what is in these recommendations. Obviously, there's discussion about how and precisely when, but my driving mission is to deliver. I want the first 5 years of the Labour government to be a delivery exercise. I want as much of this delivered as possible, and therefore that consultation is about delivering. And that's all recommendations to be delivered as quickly as possible, because we're not going to be consulting after that manifesto. But that's why we asked for recommendations that were capable of being delivered within the first 5 years of a Labour government. So I'm very clear that we're not putting this off. I don't want a discussion, etc., going on for years on end. I want to see the change, because I think the change, not just economically, which I was concentrating on in Beth's case, but also politically. You know, so many people in this country feel they are not being heard. They can't influence the decisions. That other people suggest that they know better about the things that are local to them. And we need to break that model and to break it for good. So we want to get on to deliver this, and that means this is a first-term agenda. Can I, on your second point, Chris, look, whenever any politician sets out an answer to the underlying issue, the medium and long term, every journalist says, but I want an answer to what's going to happen in the next few weeks. And we go on and on and on. We've been doing this for 12 years. What are you going to do about the NHS winter crisis? We need more people in NHS. Don't want that answer, it'll take too long. Tell me what you're going to do this winter. And then we go on, spin forward 12 months. Next question, what are you going to do about the NHS? We need more people. Don't want that answer, that's medium term. What are you going to do this winter? Same on energy. What are you going to do on energy? We need new renewables. Don't want that answer, it takes too long. What are you going to do this winter? Same on what are you going to do about the economy? We've got to fundamentally change it to make sure it works for everyone. Don't want that answer, tell me what we can do this winter. We will go on with this sticking plaster approach forever. We've been doing it for 12 years. It's one of the reasons we haven't got anywhere. So I'm not going to shy away. Gordon is right. We do need to answer what are we going to do about energy prices. We've actually answered that question, took a lead to say freeze energy prices, use the excess profits of oil and gas companies to pay for that, etc. We've answered the question about what are you going to do with the NHS by saying what we do immediately and what we'll do in the longer term. But we can't keep shying away from this or pretending. And actually, Chris, I reckon if you spent some time in Leeds today, I don't mean this patronising, don't get me wrong, but people here have got a passion for this change. Alicia and I were in Burnley not so long ago. People want this change. They've been saying it for a long time. They just want a government that gets it and gets on with it. So, you know, this is absolutely central to answering the everyday questions and issues that people are facing, and less of the sticking plaster, more of the actual solutions to the problem. And to be honest, there's a political consensus that we need to move decision-making from Whitehall out to closer to people, but only Labour's come up with a compelling, comprehensive case for actually doing so, and I'm very proud that we've done that. Thank you, Chris. I've got Nick from the Telegraph, please.
Thank you. 76 Labour MPs have second jobs. Would you lead by example by telling them that they need to give those up? And would you have any plans to introduce an internal party ban on second jobs ahead of the next election? And if I may, quickly one on strikes. You've previously said that you would repeal all anti-union legislation. Can you commit to repealing any legislation the Conservatives pass on minimum service levels? And when would you do that? Would that be a priority as soon as you enter office? Thank you.
Yeah, look, on second jobs, Nick, there are proposals in the report, as you will have seen, and obviously they will be consulted on just as we'll consult on the other issues. But actually, I think it was a year or so ago, we already set out our position in relation to second jobs when this first cropped up. I was in the middle of a press conference when Boris Johnson tried to bomb my press conference by proposing the very same thing in relation to second jobs. The difference is he hasn't got on with it. So we've set that out. There are proposals in clear terms in the report. Now, there is obviously, again, a question of how we implement those, but we've actually set out a pretty compelling case on second jobs. On the question of where the government goes next on strikes, look, I don't think more legislation restricting the right to strike is the right way forward. I think the government should fix the underlying problems. I think the government should get off its hands, and it's been sitting on its hands throughout these disputes, rather than resolving them. And you don't have to go far. Go to Wales and see a different government taking a different approach, and some of the not dissimilar disputes have actually been resolved. And I think that's, you know, there's resolved the issues now, but, you know, what underpins this, these industrial disputes, it's a cost of living crisis, which is pressured down on people because the economy isn't working. And so it's not, you know, the report today is not removed from the question of what you do on strikes and industrial action. It actually underpins it. Thank you, Nick. I've got Ashley from The Mirror.
These proposals that you've outlined today are probably going to take a number of years. Would you commit to abolishing the hereditary peer position in the House of Lords within the first few weeks of taking office? I mean, surely there's no need for a consultation on that issue. And are you committed to having this new chamber in Westminster, or will it be another city like Leeds where we are today?
On hereditary peers, I mean, the sooner we can abolish them, the better. I think the last Labour government went further than any previous government down that road, and I'd be surprised if there's anybody that could make a halfway sensible argument for hereditary peers. So, of course, that needs to be done. But, you know, what I would say, Ashley, is the House of Lords reforms within this report are really important, but they've got to be seen as part of the much wider package of devolution of power away from Westminster and Whitehall to communities, both politically and economically. And that's the driving issue that goes through this report. That was the central thing that I wanted answered. And the House of Lords reform is part of that, because I don't think you can have a serious discussion about the future of the UK without addressing the House of Lords, which is not capable of being defended, in my view. On the location of any second chamber, look, the report doesn't make any recommendations in relation to that. I think the discussion is much more likely to be what's the makeup, etc. But one of the important things about place, and one of the recommendations in the report you'll have seen, is that the second chamber should have representatives from Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and from the regions. Now, that's not to create new posts, it's to make use of what we've got. And I think that is very, very important. Hardwiring a stronger voice for Scotland and Wales and for our regions and our mayors in the arrangements that we'll put in place through a second chamber. Thank you, Ashley. Jen from the Financial Times, I'm hoping, has made it. Yes.
Just on the Council of Nations and Regions, there seem to be a few different versions, possible versions of that in the report. I think there's a Council of England, a Council of the UK, Council of Nations and Regions. I just wondered what your preference would be. What would that look like in practice? This is on the body that would be like a body that would draw together different parts of the country to consult.
Yeah. I mean, I'll bring Gordon in on this, but just to be clear, they're not alternatives. They work differently. So the Council for the Regions and Nations brings together the representatives of the regions and nations. The Council of the Nations is effectively to take over from the joint ministerial group, which didn't work very well. And the Council of England is to deal with regional representation in England. So they're not alternatives. These are not new politicians that we're inventing, by the way. They're not newly elected posts or anything, but they're making much better use of the representatives that we already have. Gordon, just to make sure, Jen, that we've got the complete answer to your question, can I bring Gordon in?
Just think of the first stages of the virus and what was happening with COVID, where every local authority, the mayors, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland were complaining that there was not proper consultation about some of the measures that were being taken, that there were different interpretations being given, and there ought to be some form of coordination. And what we're really saying is, whether it's that, or whether it's dealing with the environment, or whether it's dealing with some of the economic issues that come up, we should have the ability and capacity for all the key players to meet together at a council chaired by the Prime Minister, and that would be Keir Starmer, in my view and my hope, and with an independent secretariat to bring together the agendas of the different bodies that make this up. So the Council of the UK would be the Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and the UK government. It would sometimes meet as the Council of the Nations and Regions with the different regions of England. That would have been far more relevant when we were dealing with COVID. But sometimes there's just distinctly English legislation, and it would meet as a council to look at English legislation or English practices and procedures. So it's really one council with three different forms of meeting, chaired by the Prime Minister. The Welsh First Minister, Mark Drakeford, you may remember, complained that he'd written to the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, at the start of COVID, and he hadn't even had a written reply. Now, these are the things that should not happen. If the United Kingdom is going to work well and is going to work together, we need to have a form of consultation and coordination, and that's what the Commission, and the Commission was made up of every region and nation, and you can talk to all the members who are here today. That's what we recommend, and I think it's the only way forward for Britain.
Great, thank you.
Very quickly ask a follow-up question, which
see, now Beth set the trend, everybody.
If you win the next election, you'll have been out of power 13, 14 years by that point. Are you really going to hand power away as the first thing that you do?
Yes, I think it's absolutely vital. But I don't see it as handing power away. I see it as putting power where it should be. And I think that's very, very important to say, because we're only going to repair our economy, repair our politics, if we recognise that decisions about communities and places are best made by those with skin in the game. So it's not about whether we're giving our power away, it's recognising where power properly should be. I've got Amy from Global Radio, I hope.
Hi, yes, thank you very much. So improving rail and transport links in the north is the key to devolution. If you were to become Prime Minister, what's the first thing you would do to make our trams, buses and trains better?
Well, firstly, keep our promises, put the resource in, and also give more power to those in the locality to make key decisions. I feel very strongly about this in relation to buses, because we all talk about trains a lot, and for good reason, not least this morning. But actually, the vast majority of people, or many more people, go to work, get around on buses. And what you've seen with our metro mayors is the shaping of the future of our buses in relation to fixed prices so that people can actually afford, and some control over the routes, so you don't just get buses, hundreds of buses going on the most profitable route and no buses going to the route that maybe isn't the most profitable. So there are key things we can do straight away. I do want to bring Tracy in on this because I've been on one of Tracy's buses here in Leeds not long ago, and it would only be right that she brings in to say what she's doing on buses, which is greening buses, but also the ambition in relation to prices and routes.
Thank you. And thank you, Jen, for your work focusing on buses and trains and making it really important. Look, we all know that particularly in the north, that the train network is broken, but 80% of those on public transport travel by bus. It's really important in a cost of living crisis to reduce the fares. Now, I've been able to do that, but I don't have control over the networks. So while I've been reducing fares, I have companies running for profit that are pulling out routes. So people are saying to me, oh, it's all right, Tracy, a cheaper fare, but there's no bus for me to get on. So I don't have those powers and that control. And when corralling the northern mayors to talk to the transport minister, we represent 9 million people, and our train network is broken. Our bus network is run for profit. This is not good enough, and that's why I am so delighted to be here today, because for the first time, it really feels like we are being heard, particularly in the north, that we don't have to go cap in hand to government time and again, because when we get a Labour government, we'll have colleagues who understand that if you give power to those who understand their communities and what needs to be done, then we can bring that change and that economic recovery for the whole of the country. Buses are really important, and it seems like I am the bus queen now, so I do travel on buses actually, and Jen the other day said, hey Tracy, hey kid, I voted for you because you're one of us. And I think people in power also need to live like the people that they represent as well. So I think it's good that you brought it up. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, Amy.
Focusing on Yorkshire again, you talk about developing clusters of economic activity. How will this affect Yorkshire? What will happen here?
Oh, well, I mean, Tracy can come in on this as well, but Leeds, health tech, fintech, Leeds has got really good hubs here already that we can build on and build out to other places across Yorkshire and beyond. And what that gives is the ability, the rightful ability for communities, businesses, partnerships to help us grow the economy, starting in their place, and also giving an identity to place, whether it's health tech here, fintech here, or whether it's hydrogen on the northeast coast. Not only economic growth, but economic place and identity as well, because, there are different theories of economic growth. One theory says you could grow more in London and the South East and then redistribute to the rest of the United Kingdom. I profoundly disagree with that theory of growth, and a Labour government won't go down that theory of growth because I don't think it respects and uses the resource and talent and brilliance of everybody else across the whole of the United Kingdom, which is why we want these recommendations to drive through growth in every part of the United Kingdom and stop this system that holds back communities everywhere. You don't need to go very far into any community, either here in Yorkshire or across the rest of the country, and you will meet people with massive ambition about what they could do where they are. They just haven't got a government that's up alongside them. We're going to change that. Now, Mason from the Yorkshire Post. Mason.
Thank you. In terms of specifics of how this is actually going to work for Yorkshire, a one Yorkshire devolution deal is something that's very popular in your own party and in the region. Is this something that you're ruling out in the consultation? Because it sounds like you are when you say you don't want to redraw any boundaries or take powers away from existing mayors and areas.
I'll bring Tracy in on this. What I don't want to do is use the Commission as the place in which we have an argument about boundaries for new mayoralties, etc., etc. It doesn't mean that forever I'm committed to never changing any of that. But it is important. We could have a long discussion about which mayor or whether there should be a mayor for this place, that place, what powers they should have. Let's align all the powers. And it is because of the way it's developed, there are differences, and there are places that do or don't have different types of representation. So you could have quite an interesting academic discussion for 5 years about precisely how you change all of that. But that isn't how I want to run a Labour government. I want a Labour government that says, we are where we are, let's start with the powers we know are already there, combined authorities, metro mayors, other clusters, and let's build our economy from there. I think we can have a discussion about other issues and boundaries at the same time, but I do know that if we go down the rabbit warren of just talking about where the boundaries are, we'll come out in 5 years' time without actually having changed anything for people in the areas that they live in, and we're not going to do that under a Labour government. Thank you very much. Then I've got Kate from ITV Yorkshire, I hope.
Yeah, there are many people in Yorkshire who've already welcomed this notion of more powers, but with that has to come more money to implement significant changes. Where, particularly at this time, where on earth is that going to come from?
Well, Katie, what we want to do is to make sure that resource as well as power comes out of Westminster and Whitehall, and that does mean control over the money as well as the decision making. There are a number of different ways that can be done. They're set out in the report, including the fact that quite a lot of money at the moment is in silos, and therefore there's no sort of horizontal thinking about how you can join money up, and they're controlled in the centre. And therefore, you could almost sum up the government's Levelling Up project as, sitting in London with a pot of money, inviting people to bid into the pot, and then to decide along government lines who's going to get any money. I think that's completely wrong. We've got to be brave enough to put the money there as well. Gordon, did you want to come in on that?
No, I think you've summed it up, to be honest.
Good. And then Gemma from Radio Leeds. Yes.
Thank you. When it comes to the extra powers for mayors like Tracy Brabin and Oliver Coppard, what exactly are we talking about? And also, when it comes to these economic clusters, are you not sort of encouraging mayors and regions sort of pitted against each other, chasing that investment?
Gemma, in terms of what would be devolved, what would the power that we're seeking to transfer, all of that is set out in terms in the report, but it's control not just over resource, it's control over housing, better control over transport, better control over skills, better control over further education. There's plenty in the report of examples of where we feel the decision should be made closer to where people are. And that's why that's why we build it as the single biggest transfer of power away from the centre to the places where decisions, I feel, ought to be made. On your second point about competition, quite the opposite. Hardwired into this report is the word cooperation. And different areas cooperating with each other. I think that's what happens in the real world. I think that's the way that, if I came to the Yorkshire Post Fastest 500 awards 2 or 3 years ago, and I was really struck by the 50 fastest, growing businesses in Yorkshire, all different businesses, all doing different things, but actually able to complement and work with each other. And I think there are examples of that across the whole of the United Kingdom. So cooperation is hardwired. I think the sooner we can go down this path, the sooner we can actually start delivering. It is the complete opposite of a pot of money being held in the centre where the government says, you tell me why you should have that money and I'll decide and I'll pit you against each other. You bet I will. This is the complete inversion of that, if you like.
If I could just add here, I think I want to emphasise that when we were doing our work, we were looking at the economy of the whole of the United Kingdom and how it was changing. And we were finding that in different areas around the United Kingdom, including in Leeds, right across Yorkshire, but right across different parts of the country, there were new innovative companies, new technologies being developed, sometimes out of the universities, sometimes out of bigger companies becoming smaller companies coming out of bigger companies, but needing support. And they needed support at the local level. They needed support to meet their training needs and the skills that they wanted. They needed support with research and development. They needed support with infrastructure, transport, and all these arrangements being suitable for them. And this is not happening at the moment in the way it should and at the level that it should. So we identified 288 different hubs of economic activity around the United Kingdom. And we thought if the mayors and the local economic partnerships could have the powers to develop the training, the skills, and also to back them up with research, investment and infrastructure, then they would be in a far better position to expand and create the jobs of the future. Now, if we'd been talking 20 or 30 years ago, we might have been talking about British Steel, British Coal, British Telecom, British this, as the big creators of jobs. We're actually talking about innovative industries in every part of the country, in the new technologies, digital, creative, also in life sciences and medicine, where the enormous potential for breakthrough, and Britain to be one of the world leaders, coming not out of London, but out of all the different parts of the United Kingdom. And the report is really built around this idea. If you support these industries and you support the new jobs of the future, then we can have a far more successful economy, which is far more balanced between North and South, and will create the big jobs of the future. And all our constitutional as well as economic proposals are built around this idea that there is huge ingenuity, creativity and potential in Britain that really is waiting to be developed, and it will have to be a Labour government under Keir Starmer that does so, because it's not happening in the way it should at the moment.
Thank you, Gordon. I think Darshana and Romilly are now here. I was told as I was waiting to come up that there was a problem with the trains, but I think we now have you both. So can we take Romilly, if you don't mind first, and then Darshana, or the other way around?
Yeah, apologies for missing the other questions. I feel like I should ask whether you can make the trains run on time. But I will ask. These are just recommendations which you will now consult on. How many of them do you expect and do you want to go into your manifesto? And do you expect to implement the notoriously difficult House of Lords reform in your first term?
Yeah, Romilly, thank you for that. It has come up, but it's still, a very important question. So I asked for this report, for this commission to be set up, for this report to be prepared, and I'm really pleased with the recommendations that we've got. It's true that there will now be a consultation on refining and testing and how we implement them, but I made it clear to Gordon and Commission when we started, and it's within the report, that we wanted recommendations capable of being implemented within the first 5 years of a Labour government. And the reason we're doing the consultation now and before the election is because when we come into power, if we do, and I hope that we do, we want to move straight to implementing them as quickly as possible. That obviously includes the House of Lords, which is only one of a broad number of recommendations. But what I want is a Labour government that delivers. I don't want a Labour government that carries on the discussion or the consultation exercise. We want to be in delivering, and that's why these recommendations are deliberately couched as actionable, deliverable recommendations, and why we made it clear from the start that we wanted recommendations capable of delivery within that first 5-year term of a Labour government. And Darshana.
We've been interviewing people out and about over the last few months, people who are really struggling with their bills, cost of living, employment, their wages and so on. None of them mention things like House of Lords reform. I'm wondering if you feel that this is a priority for people at the minute.
Well, the House of Lords reform is one of a huge number of recommendations. What's driving the report, what drives me, and what will drive the next Labour government is fixing our broken economy and fixing our broken politics. And this report is central to that. Of course, we all know there's a cost of living crisis. Of course, we all know that energy prices are too high. Of course, we all know that the NHS is already in a winter crisis. But underpinning all of that is 12 years of failure when it comes to the economy, 12 years of failure to grow the economy at any significant rate. And we've got to fix that. And I genuinely believe that holding us back is the fact that we don't use all the parts of our United Kingdom to help grow our economy, that too much reliance is on London and the South East, and this is not about putting down London or the South East, it's about empowering the other parts of the country. So, and I genuinely believe, not just because, I'm saying it theoretically, I and my shadow cabinet spend our whole time out of London, across the country, in different communities. It's much more useful than being in Parliament half the time. And everywhere I go, it's the same, Leeds or wherever it is, it's the same story. Ask any community whether they've got ideas, ambitions for where they are, where they live, and the change that they think could be brought about. You bet they have. There's no shortage. If you take your crew out, come with us on one of our sessions where we ask people, what are your ambitions?
Well, there we are. We're going to grab a word with Sky's political editor, Beth Rigby, who's been watching this event in Leeds for the last hour. Beth, has your pulse been racing at all of that?
Ian, so it's hard to hear you because Keir Starmer is just wrapping up this press conference here in Leeds. What are they doing? It's a 155-page report about the UK's future. It's all about, to quote the party leader, about devolving power from Westminster and fixing, to quote him, our broken economy and our broken politics. It's a report commissioned by Keir Starmer. It's just wrapping up now. Commissioned by Keir Starmer, written by Gordon Brown. It's taken 2 years, and there are absolutely tons of recommendations in it. And I guess the big question in this room was, it's all good to talk the talk, but will you walk the walk? What will you actually implement? Well, the main strands of it is devolution, about passing power, economic power, tax-raising power from central government to local government to the English mayors, and also to devolve governments in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. And then, of course, constitutional reform. Lots of questions about would Keir Starmer abolish the House of Lords, replace it with an elected chamber in his first term. He says that's his ambition. But really, the question, I think, really is how relevant is this to people struggling with the cost of living. He says we have to fix the economy to fix the struggles of everyday lives. I wonder how it will land with a public with far more pressing demands at the moment.
Thank you, Beth. That's it from me for today. I'm very, very sorry that the business news got completely eaten into by the politicians. I'm back tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock and we'll try again then. Stay tuned for the rest of the morning's news after this short break. Cheerio.